Welcome to Melting Plot, an actual play podcast that features a cast of characters randomly selected from popular fiction. Each season, our heroes attempt to survive an apocalyptic scenario to find out how their characters might handle themselves at the end of the world. If you're new to Melting Plot, I recommend that you start at the beginning of the season so you can experience the story the way the players do. This is Season 2, and Middle-earth is in peril. Frodo was unable to destroy the One Ring, and Sauron's army covered the world in hatred and darkness. What little hope remains is tied to the fate of a few heroes willing to resist. But will it be enough? So as the silence settles into a gentle nothing, you just now feel confident in your ability to move without waking the monster below the keep. Archer, Bones, Jasmine, you're standing in the guard room. You have just collected your gear, your upgraded gear. Jasmine now has a shield and a crossbow. Archer has a new crossbow. Bones has a new shield. That creature, the one that you saw creeping through the village earlier, has now fallen asleep somewhere in the castle. You hope. But just now, as you let the silence settle into a calming rhythm, do you feel that you can start to move once again in safety?
All right, it sounds like it might be asleep. Let's try to get back to camp. Any objections?
Jasmine shakes her head.
Bones also nods.
We have a shot from the entry hall of the keep. It's high up near the ceiling, and the room is so big that it makes the three figures look small as the three of you kind of slowly walk out the front door and into the courtyard. As you get about halfway through the courtyard, you can now see the impact from where the creature jumped off of the roof or the higher floors of this building and landed here in the courtyard. And the crater it left is so big that the three of you can stand in it and still not fully consume it. You can see the footprints of it as well. And as you get up close enough to inspect it, you now see the full size of the creature that lives here. You continue to creep back through Brackenshore, back to the tower that you're using as a makeshift camp for the time being. Archer still has a couple of days left that he needs to rest in order to fully recover from his critical injuries. And as you make it back, it doesn't look like the creature got quite so far out of the town itself. You pick your way back to the third floor of the tower, and once again, through the kind of broken wall of the tower on the third floor, you overlook the village itself as the sun sets and turns it dark.
So as they get back to the guard tower, Jasmine finally feels somewhat safe enough to start talking again, and she turns to the other two, and she looks bewildered and really nervous, and she says, "Do you think we're going to be safe in this city? That thing looked like it was moving around a lot, and it's huge. That thing is enormous. Are we safe here?"
I think as long as we don't start a fire and don't draw any attention to ourselves, if it can't find us in its own nest, it's not going to find us out here.
I do think that we should be moving on pretty soon. If we could just recover our strength for another day, or if we can just last another day or two, I think that's probably for the best. Move forward in strength instead of our weakened and disheveled state here.
We should also wait for you to recover. We should wait for you to recover. I agree.
Well, I think we might want to find a way to hide ourselves better. The lower tower is probably an okay place to start a fire if we can cover the windows. Do we have any blankets or anything? Can we use the bedrolls?
We need to sleep in the bedrolls.
How is it cold?
Well, what season is it?
Summer.
Not cold. It's actually kind of hot.
I mean, we've got dried food. If it's not going to be cold, there's no real reason for us to start a fire.
Yeah, that's true. All the food that we got was probably not like fresh meat.
It was trail rations.
Like, dried. Yeah, okay.
Let's just keep a low profile and see if we can hunker down and gather our strength.
Okay.
You hunker down for the night. Morning comes. Every once in a while, through the course of the night, you think that you hear something moving through the city. And you wake up. drift back off as you convince yourself it's nothing. The morning does come, and its rays shine over the top of this village. And you're the first to see it because you're in a high tower. Again, a nice day. Blue skies, a couple of wispy clouds here or there. How do you want to spend the next couple of days, or do you want to spend the next couple of days here? Archer still has a few days left before he's fully recovered.
As we're waiting, Archer begins to take stock of our rations and those kinds of things. And says, we're running pretty low on food. I know that we're trying to keep a low profile, but we should probably go and search for supplies. That marketplace seems like a pretty promising place to start. Maybe find any non-perishables or things that could sustain us as we begin to move on.
I agree. We don't have much of a choice. Even if it's enough for the time we spend here while we recover, we'll have nothing going forward.
So the next couple of days are going to carry on this way, where Archer, because of his condition, can't spend too long outside of rest. So he goes back and forth to rest and then maybe out to scavenge a little. And so too does Bones, who's tending Archer, and Jasmine. You're able to search through the marketplace. The marketplace is one sprawling street that used to be set up in temporary stands to sell produce or other goods, as well as a couple of buildings that were meant to be permanent structures. People who had the coin to actually set up a permanent shop. So you begin searching. I'll take a perception check, please. Difficulty's average.
2 advantage.
2 failures, 1 advantage.
You guys suck. I got 1 success and 1 threat.
But I can tell you that this is a place you don't necessarily want to succeed in your perception check. Because, Jasmine, as you're searching through the marketplace, you tip over a fallen table that's kind of set aside and almost covering something, and you think this is hidden treasure. Because it's set up in order to cover whatever it is that it's hiding. But as you pull away the table, slide it off, cast it aside, you see a corpse of a person who's huddled over a child to protect the child. And you see a spear has been driven through both the man and the child and is embedded in the floor. And it now freezes them in their final position. And as you witness it, Jasmine, this desperate despair overcomes you. And you two, Bones and Archer, you fail in your search, so you find nothing of meaning here. Until you walk in on Jasmine, who's just stuck in this kind of deadpan stare, looking at this scene, this final scene between a man and a child. As you recall, the goblins came in and probably took everything, probably tore everything apart, consumed it, or whatever, before the monster came or got loose or whatever. Jasmine, this scene stays with you for the next couple of days as you continue to go back and search for food. And it sounds like you're using the advantages on your searches just to prolong the amount of food you have. Not enough that will carry you through days as you leave Brackenshore, but enough that you don't have to use your current rations while you're here. You're able to scavenge enough from the day to day. A couple of days go by. You've now fully picked through the market square and found what it is that there is to find there. Archer, you're starting to feel the full effects of your recovery now. You have a couple of more days just to be perfect. Now you can take actions without the risk of losing strain for it.
So as they go a few days without running into the monster that they had seen previously, Jasmine's curiosity at the bathhouse will kind of perk up because she hasn't had a bath for, weeks now?
It's been a while.
And she kind of misses that creature comfort. And so she talks to Archer and Bones and says, would you guys be interested in going and checking out that bathhouse and seeing if it's still safe?
As soon as Jasmine says this, Bones' face just gets this look on it because he knows what is coming as a response to this.
You're right. A bath. I've just been just way too long.
Actually,
it could be therapeutic.
I just wanted to see if it still worked. I didn't want you there.
Oh, well, I wasn't inviting myself, but I...
Well, I mean, we can't just let you go by yourself. I mean, that creature could come out of nowhere, I think. It would only be fitting for us to assist you. Let's head to the bathhouse then. I mean, it was your idea.
Okay.
Bathhouse is nestled down near the river. And actually, it has a small inlet where water from the river flows in, and then there's another one that takes the water out. So it's a series of like an inflow and an outflow, essentially, that refills the water here at the bathhouse. And it's a big building, or a big complex set into several different buildings. So probably separated by the type of service you would receive there. So there's a large central common room with many baths inside of it. And then there are other rooms just for general relaxation, so like card games or places where you could go and get a massage or things like that. So it's a fairly big complex. As you approach it, it looks like all other buildings. It looks like it's been kind of torn through. But since it is farther down near the river, it has less of the markings of that big creature and more the markings of loot by goblins and things like that.
As they approach this bathhouse, Jasmine starts trying to tug one of the strands of cloth out of her hair, which is just completely, utterly a tangled mess. And she looks at Archer and says, "You'll stay outside, right?"
You have my word as a gentleman.
If I believed you were a gentleman, I might take your word for it. So is the actual bathhouse, like, still functional?
Yeah, actually, as you enter it, you can see basically the water flows into a floor below where the bathhouse is, and it's got all of these pulley systems where they would fill buckets and then send them up to the top floor. So they're heating the water down below, and then they send the buckets up top, and then servants would walk over and pour it into these big baths. The baths themselves are kind of these big, almost like oaken barrels, and in the common room, the room that you enter in on, there are several of these big, maybe 10-foot wide oaken barrels that serve as baths. Some of them still have water in them, some of them are empty, and obviously the water at this point has just now become lukewarm. But they certainly still work. Water is still flowing in below. To heat it, you would need to start the furnaces down below.
I think Jasmine would actually be okay with a cooler bath. So yeah, she'll go find one of the tubs.
As Jasmine enters the building, Bones, Archer, what do you guys want to do? How do you want to spend the time?
Archer gives, he looks like he's considering something, but then he sees Bones, and he knows that Bones is just going to be a killjoy, and so he decides to actually wait outside and just generally keeping watch.
Give me a vigilance check. Average.
Yep, 1 success.
Down the road that kind of reconnects to the main road running through the city, you now see at a corner up ahead, Parsons Brewery. A building you clearly missed originally. See it now.
Well, would you look at that?
Look at what?
There's a brewery just down the way. I mean, we should probably check to see if there are any rations, things that we would need for our own survival.
You just saw the brewery? Did you not even look out of the tower? I'm kind of surprised at you, Archer.
I've been very busy, okay?
Unfortunately, I do agree that if there is anything in there, it's better than not having anything to drink.
I think the princess is fine in her exclusive bath.
You know she will kill you if she finds out that you left her alone and unguarded while you went to the brewery.
Well, that's why she won't be alone. Mr. Chivalry over here. Here, stand watch. I'll be back. And Archer just walks away. Walks towards the brewery.
Archer, as you approach the brewery, you think that you see the door swinging. Open or closed, hard to tell because that movement is so subtle and then stops. Or maybe it wasn't happening at all. But you start to get the uneasy feeling that you may not be alone here.
Archer's going to draw his crossbow and cock it back, and so he's prepared for anything. And he slowly approaches the door. He's going to peek in through a window. Is there a window that he can kind of peek in?
Yeah, sure.
So he's gonna slowly approach the building, sort of duck down, and then peer in through a window to see if there's anything he can see inside.
Seems clear there's nothing in there.
So he sees there's nothing in there, and so Archer's gonna go, and he's gonna quietly open the door and go inside.
Okay. You enter. Tables have been overturned. and there is the odor of fermented beers. It seems to have stained the woodwork, and you can see a lot of the casks in the back have kind of been cracked open, and all of them seem empty. So now the beer that was once in them has poured out and stained the wood floors. But there's got to be something in here. Do you want to give me a perception check?
Average?
Sure.
Failure with an advantage.
You don't find anything of use here, of use being, food or, more importantly for Archer, drinks. But the advantage. Now you hear something outside of the building. There is definitely something moving amongst the streets, and it appears to be cautious because it's kind of a slow rattle as it bumps or knocks something over. But it's an obvious and almost deliberate movement, perhaps a clumsy movement, it's hard to tell. So you throw your back against the wall underneath the window and kind of peer out in terror as you think it might be that creature.
Archer looks, he doesn't see, so peers out the window, doesn't see anything yet?
You hear it in a building across the street.
Alright, so Archer's gonna do like a stealth check to see if he can sneak up on,
Okay. What does that look like when he's like crossing a street? Does he just like,
he's holding the crossbow.
Tactical somersaults.
He's doing little somersaults and rolls and things, standing up, leaning his back against the building, peering around corners, and every time he rolls, he lets out like a subtle "acha." He's basically narrating his own, doing his own sound effects as he goes.
So it's a stealth check then? Is what I'm hearing you say?
With sound effects? No. It is a stealth check.
It's an average check.
Okay. He fails.
So you fail your check, and you make more noise than you think than you had expected to make. So maybe as you roll forward, you roll over some debris, and it goes clattering off down the street as you let loose some pieces of wood or some banded metal that would hold a barrel together, and it just starts rolling down the street. And as soon as you make that noise, you hear the noise inside the shop stop. It goes silent. And then almost immediately thereafter, you hear several sets of footsteps as they appear to flee somewhere out the back of the shop, somewhere away from you.
So Archer gives up on stealth, and he just bursts through the door and is going to tear off after them.
Okay, I need an easy athletics check, please.
Okay.
Don't fail.
4 successes and 3 advantage.
So you immediately break into this room, and you see a figure, some form, maybe a goblin, disappear out the back of the building. An area you know to be just a tight alleyway with almost no exits. So instead of following him directly, you run up the stairs to the second floor of this building, open a window, and creep out onto the rooftop of an adjacent building. And you're kind of peering over the edges, keeping pace with the thing below. And just as you level the crossbow to take a shot, and these two adversaries run to the end of the alleyway and then realize they're stuck there, they turn around, and you recognize them as Bruce and Raja. Bruce, I need a discipline roll, please.
Average, what do you want?
Easy.
Oh, this is going to be so bad. 3 success on Bruce's discipline roll to not Hulk out. So as Bruce turns around, he feels his own heart pumping in his chest, and he looks up, kind of down the barrel of this crossbow pointed at him. And then all of a sudden, coming into focus, he recognizes it's Archer behind the crossbow. With a deep sigh of relief, his posture kind of falls from its great sense of alert. And you start to notice that Raja doesn't seem to be tracking you at all.
Raja's looking kind of every which way, almost turning, cocking his head to the side in order to hear. His eyes may even be closed.
Oh, how did you... Bruce, how did you find us? What are you even doing? What are you doing here?
And Bruce is going to call back to you, Archer! And he'll wave his hand.
Shh, hey, quiet. And he realizes that he's the one who kind of started yelling, but he quickly overlooks that fact and goes, shh, keep it down! And then he runs down the stairs and joins Bruce in the alley.
Now you can realize that Bruce has some lingering wounds, but not nearly as much as Raja, who you took to be dead when you rode off, and is obviously still fairly close to it. Raja has some grievous wounds. Something's wrong with his eyes.
How did you find us? And why are you naked?
Oh, right, because Bruce is now in
Tatters.
shredded, tattered clothing.
I don't know what semblance of clothing you have.
He has shorts on.
So you're looking at Raja, who's got this matted down fur from like still maybe the stickiness of spider webs that just won't go away, and like the blood that's caked many of the spots on his body where his fur used to be fluffy, billowy. And Bruce is also cut up quite a bit. In fact, you see one fairly significant wound on his shoulder. The rest of them are minor cuts, but is just wearing tatters. So the scene of these two just looks horrible.
You look like you could use a bath. Luckily, there's a bathhouse right around the corner. Let's.
Did everybody make it out of there?
Surprisingly, yes. I mean, I thought we lost you, but I mean there was nothing I could do about it. I was unconscious. I mean, if I had been awake, that I'm sure we would have gotten the whole team out of there. But yeah, let's convene at the bathhouse. Let's go.
Bones, you see as Archer rounds the corner from the brewery, and he's empty-handed, unfortunately. But following him is a really beat-up Bruce and an even worse-looking Raja. And you have this moment of excitement as you realize they're still alive, and then you realize how recently you have worked on Raja. And now, apparently, we'll have to do so again. Bruce, at the bottom of this hill, as you near the river that this bathhouse sits on, you see Bones standing outside.
Bruce is holding his tatters that are now serving kind of as his makeshift shorts, sort of loincloth style nearly, as he makes his way towards you. And he's just going to offer a handshake as he approaches you.
I'm glad to see you made it out of there alive.
Glad to see you actually ran. Thank you for taking my advice.
I think we know what you did there, and I don't know how to repay you for it.
All I have to say is that if we ever end up in a dangerous situation again, don't wait for me to tell you to run. Just run.
While this reunion is happening, Archer is going to take this thin excuse that he has to burst open into the bathhouse.
Of course.
Yeah. Jasmine, you won't believe what I found.
Every shot we have in the bathhouse is taken from an angle in which obscures Jasmine as she like moves around or whatever. So like Archer's head is just in the way, or like we have one from like a window with some broken boards that kind of just like...
I actually feel like Jasmine would have hurried her bath a little bit, specifically because she didn't trust Archer.
So she's probably like just wrapping herself up, getting out of the bath as Archer busts in, to Archer's dismay.
It's a good thing that you were... Guess who I found? You won't believe it.
I imagine I won't. Who did you find?
Come on outside, and just remember, and don't say I never did anything for you.
Jasmine looks really suspicious, but she'll follow.
Archer leaves. Jasmine comes out on his heels. You see Bruce. And you see Raja.
Jasmine, like, just the smile on her face is huge. And she races over to Raja and, like, kneels down and moves in for a hug, but sees how wrecked he looks. And, like, she hugs as best as she can without bumping against any of his wounds or injuries. And she's just like, Raja, Bruce, how did you escape? How did you get out? How are you still alive?
Look, I'm sorry. I had lost my spectacles, so I couldn't really find any sort of plants that would actually serve as a remedy or antidote to deal with the venom that was causing Raja so much pain. There really wasn't much that I could do, and of course, we were eventually able to make it out there. But I'm sorry I didn't take care of him better.
You saved his life. Why are you apologizing?
I don't know that there's much that I can do for his eyes.
Now you realize that his eyes, if he opens them, which he probably tries to, are deeply red, and the skin around them is swollen. There is pieces of maybe fang or webbing or both that have just lodged in there, and it's clear that Raja can't see.
You don't need to apologize for this. I thought he was dead. I thought both of you were gone. But you're here. How did you survive, though? I saw you turn into something huge.
How huge?
I mean, you were at least twice as big as a normal person size, maybe 3.
Well, was it 2 or was it 3?
I don't know. It was dark, and you were covered in spiders.
Look, the fact that you have seen it and survived is already an incredible experience. And frankly, I have never seen it myself. So you have more information on that side than I even do.
Is that what the chains were for?
The chains were the next step in my experiment, but sadly, I still don't know that that's a strong enough deterrent.
All right, so what the hell is going on? Have we been walking around with a time bomb and you haven't said anything?
What's a time bomb?
We were walking around in uncertain peril this entire time and you didn't feel the need?
I didn't say anything? What haven't I said? I've told multiple people to run at different points. I told everybody that I was dangerous right from the beginning.
You could have made it a little clearer that you would have hulked out into some green monstrosity.
He said he's never seen it.
That seems like a pretty big ask for us to believe that you didn't know what was going to happen.
I'm afraid I can't remember most of the things that happen when I go into that alternative state, but I have been dedicating all of my time and study to figuring out some way that I can actually cure this. I have traveled distances that you wouldn't believe, searching out different plants, searching out different remedies, boiling them down in different ratios, different bases, just to see if I can have any sort of effect that would give me some sort of control or at least suppress this monster that is within me that seems to come out at the slightest agitation, that just leaves behind a wake of devastation, of death.
How slight of an agitation are we talking about? And it looks as though he's considering, like, poking you, but then thinks better of it.
And Jasmine will actually step in between the two of you at that point, and she has this look of deep empathy with what Bruce just said, because he talks about this like wave of destruction behind him, and she thinks back at the city that was overrun by the orcs and Stilben and his farm and how that was up in flames, and she feels very similarly to that right now. And so she steps between Archer and Bruce, and she says, "For what it's worth, I owe you a great debt because you've saved Raja, and you're willing to help me cure my father. In return for that, if I can get back to my father and if we can heal him, I will use all the resources at my disposal to try and help you."
I'm not sure that I can be helped. But just promise me this. That in the scenario where we actually save your father, you never try to control what's in me.
Control it? No, cure it.
To cure it. And for you, Archer, let me just say, you wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
Later that evening, probably before dusk fully sets in, you find yourself back at the tower on the first floor where you've gathered a lot of your belongings. Is somebody on the top floor to keep guard?
Archer is standing on the top floor.
Down below on the first floor is Bruce, Jasmine, and Bones with Raja sitting by a fire. Now the first floor is mostly contained with a couple of windows, but no broken walls. So the fire you light in here is fairly contained as far as the light that it sheds throughout the city. Archer, from the top floor, you see as a gentle mist kind of rolls down from the mountains and subtly bathes the top portions of this city and then drops into the streets and slowly spreads out among the streets itself. This happens from time to time, especially in the foothills of the Misty Mountains. Down on the first floor,
Jasmine sits beside the fire, beside Raja, and she's dug out her mother's hairbrush from her belongings that she took from home, and she is carefully running it through Raja's fur.
As you do so, you start to see the wounds that Raja has sustained. So what are his critical injuries?
Raja has 3 critical injuries. He has distracted and fearsome and blinded.
Fearsome wound, distracted, and blinded. So he's got an easy, an average, and a hard critical injury. He is in very rough shape. So you see large cuts on him that as you clean them up and kind of soak with water, they almost start to bleed again into his fur. So keeping him clean is a bit of a measure. And blinded, well, that speaks for itself. His eyes, his entire face is a mess of kind of disproportioned wounds and, an inflated infection over his eyes.
Jasmine tries really hard not to agitate any of the wounds, but there's so much blood and tangled fur and webbing in it. She got a lot of it out in the bathhouse, but she's going to need a lot more help. So she turns to Bones and she says, I can't believe how injured he got. Can you help him again? I know you patched him up once already, and I know you're not a veterinarian, but he's really bad.
I'd be happy to take a look at him. I can't say for now how much I can do, but I can take a look at him.
Jasmine nods and kind of like points out the wounds that she's seen to him.
Bruce, you also have a critical injury, don't you?
I do.
What's your critical injury?
Minor nick.
So while you have a critical injury, it kind of doesn't matter. Actually, it matters as much as actually any other critical injury. It adds the same. So the fact that it's small seems irrelevant, but it's actually as relevant as any other wound. Bones, you diagnose the injuries on Raja, and you also notice that Bruce has one too. I mean, it's a lot of medical work that you're looking at. So how do you want to do this?
It's quite easy to triage the fact that Raja is in much worse shape than Bruce is. So he's going to start his work there.
Okay. Do you want to take the easy, the average, or the hard critical injury?
I'll start with the average injury on Raja.
Okay, that's fearsome wound. So go ahead and roll for that. And that's going to take you probably through the evening to start to cure. It's a large gash from probably one of the fangs that has drug itself down Raja's flank and has opened him up pretty severely. So it's going to be a lot of stitch work.
One triumph. It's one success.
With your triumph, not only do you patch up this wound, but you cure him of his easy severity injury as well, which is distracted. So the pain that's causing him this distraction is mended as you stitch up his fearsome wound. He does still have the blinded wound, which you'll have to deal with tomorrow. As the night goes on, Archer, you see the keep from where you're standing, and you see movement on the roof of the keep as this massive form crawls to the roof itself and then down the side of the building in the front, disappearing behind the walls of the courtyard and then climbing over the top of them again and into the city. Somewhere it's searching. You look, trying to track its movements, and every once in a while you see it, and it is kind of winding its way closer to you. I'm going to give it a roll to see if it finds you. I'm giving it a daunting check to try to find you, and I'll upgrade it with a story point. Which means it's rolling a green and a yellow die versus 4 purple. Yeah. It's got 2 successes and 2 threats. Archer, the threats for it are that you see that it's coming your way long before it does, and it gives you a chance to try to hide, but it's certainly going to make its way this time towards the tower. You see it with a plenty of time to spare as it's kind of winding its way, and you see that it finds over near the bathhouse, perhaps, it catches a scent of you, and although it doesn't really have an ability to smell or to follow a scent like a dog does, it's enough to invigorate it as it starts a more desperate search, and it starts winding its way towards you. Archer.
Runs down the stairs, and in a hushed, kind of panicked whisper, he's like, Guys, the creature is coming. I thought it left the citadel, and it said it's straight for us.
Well, then we should go. Let's get on the horses. Let's just get some distance. We can come back when it leaves.
There's no way that we can just pick up and leave. But I don't know if your cat's gonna survive the journey.
Put out the fire, bring the horses indoors. Gives us less of a footprint.
Jasmine will immediately grab something and start putting out the fire.
We don't have enough horses for all of us at this point. What if we sacrifice one of the horses, send it straight up Main Street, slap it on the ass, have it go charging towards the creature. It'll find that and leave us alone.
Jasmine, did you name the horses?
Yes. Philippe and Sven.
So if the group would like to follow that plan, that's Philippe or Sven that you're sending out there. Why did you name them? That just makes them easier for me to kill. And worse for you.
That's one of our options.
We could send you.
Just saying, that seems... It seemed like it has a pretty poor sense of smell and hearing. Somehow it's headed towards us. I mean, that must have been... the odds of finding us was daunting, but somehow...
And even now, the four of you can hear its movement somewhere in the city as it's kind of tearing through houses looking for you.
Has she successfully put out the fire at this point?
Yeah. Look, the fire turns to smoke and it kind of covers this room until it, the smoke disperses out the windows or up the stairs into the further floors.
Look, if you have a better idea, then shout it out now, because the closer it is when it finds the horse, increases the odds of it finding us too.
Just do it.
All right. So,
Sven does rhyme with sacrifice.
I was gonna say, yep. So,
I didn't like Sven very much anyways.
Yep. So, I grab Philippe and...
Oh, damn.
Yeah, no. Archer takes Sven. He's going to sneak it out to kind of the main street, pointing it towards the direction of the creature, and he just swats it really hard, just right across the flank, and sending it charging up the main street towards the keep. And then he's going to sneak back to the tower.
Sven takes off. Do you leave Philippe out there, or are you going to take him
Philippe's inside.
Okay, so after you slap Sven forward, you bring Philippe inside on the central floor. And the four of you wait, and you listen, and you can hear the galloping of Sven as he tears off into the street somewhere. And things go silent for a moment as he gets out of earshot. The silence is suddenly broken by the harsh shriek and whinny of the horse and this incredible roar from whatever is in the city. You hear this mad scramble as the thing tears through buildings trying to get to the horse. And then silence.
Bruce's face drops and relaxes. There's kind of this sober look in his eyes as he looks around at each one of you. He feels inside him the monster that wants to challenge the monster outside. And as he catches each one of your eyes, he says very solemnly, "I can't stay here. None of us can stay here."
Thank you for listening. If you like the show, please share us with your friends. One of the best ways that we can grow the show is through word of mouth. Another great way to support the show is through ratings and reviews. Every 5-star rating and review that we receive helps others to find the show. If you'd like to connect with us, you can shoot us an email at meltingplotpodcast@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Twitter @plotmelting. All music was written and produced by Zachary James Kolkman. Sound design by Jeff Henders and Zachary James Kolkman. Jasmine from Aladdin was played by Rachel Kamstra. Bruce Banner was played by Zachary James Kolkman. Sterling Archer was played by Silas Sheffer. Leonard Bones McCoy was played by Tippett. And I am your host, Jeff Henders. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.